Craig Swallow, welcome to Left Out Loud. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So, Craig, you are running for Congress in Massachusetts' ninth district.
Correct.
And we talked a little bit before we started recording. You said that's more coastal area of Massachusetts. So, for the audience, just a quick overview of what your district consists of.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're thinking Massachusetts, you think of that arm. I'm all that arm, the islands, and then what's called South Shore and South Coast. So goes out almost to Rhode Island to a town called Westport, and then up and over to a town called Cohasset. So it is substantial. It has the islands, a lot of coastal community, but obviously a lot of farmland, interior demographic as well. So it is a substantially large district, but I think like most districts, it is a microcosm of everywhere else in the country as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, so I like to start kind of in the beginning. I always love to read bios of candidates, and something about your bio sort of jumped out at me right away. Your family on your mother's side fled Portugal in the 60s to come to America. Portugal at that time, for the audience, was under authoritarian rule. I believe they called that regime, was it Estado Novo? And it was just a corporatist dictatorship. So your mother and her parents came here in the 60s, um, looking for freedom, obviously, and pursuit of happiness and all the reasons that immigrants are welcome to our shores. And I'm just curious because over the last 6 years, we have seen in our country, we've seen the Supreme Court get stacked with radical right justices. We've seen the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Most recently, we've seen the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. We're recording this on the 17th, and just yesterday, they had All Roads Lead to the South, a day of demonstrations in Seth's neck of the woods in Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. And I'm just curious, like how your origin story kind of shapes your view, or does it shape your view for some of the threats to democracy and the erosion of rights that we're seeing under this Trump second term?
Yeah, growing up with being in New Bedford, Massachusetts was is a very large Portuguese population and being, 40, so I'm 90s baby. I think there was a bit of a societal focus on we are a melting pot, we include immigrants, and it is part of the American story and part of what makes us great. And growing up, that was very much for me my identifier. I was very proud of my grandparents. I can remember going out to restaurants locally in New Bedford where my grandparents would know everyone, everyone would know them. They'd be like they're from our village back home. Like it was just such a community building of like growing up here. Like I felt like I was part of something larger. Like I knew my grandparents had taken a risk and made sacrifice to come here.
Mm.
And so I think seeing what everything is happening now, I think of the last even 20 years of where that shift has come. And I think a lot of that starts from 9/11, in which we have just allowed legislation to take hold that just really leaned into the fear and the worry of the other. I'm a history major. I studied propaganda, war propaganda and politics was my focus in my colloquium at Bridgewater State University. And so I see that basic sort of focus on that other person is the problem. And those are the people we need to focus on when that is not the issue to me. To me is we're looking left and right and we need to start looking up. And so I think starting to rally working class people together to see that we are not each other's problem, we are each other's saviors. We are the ones who are going to save and take care of each other. We cannot rely on current politicians, the wealthy, anyone else to come in here and fix what is happening right now. We need to step in and we need to raise our voice and make sure that the government represents who we are. And so
Mhm.
I think when I see what's happening right now, it's part of my story in that, look, I'm also a dual citizen with Portugal. So there have
Yeah.
been discussions before with my husband of, is this something that we stay and live through? Do we
Hmm.
pursue somewhere else? And to me, I think of my grandparents and I think of the sacrifice they took in and that this is not something you can run away from, really. This is
Yeah.
something that will follow you at some point or another, whether it's you, a grandchild. And so for me, it's we stay and we shape this country into what we want it to be and what we know it can be and what its ideals and values and morals set out in the Declaration of Independence are supposed to be. And so that's
But
kind of what guides me in this whole, process and running for
yeah, and
Congress.
that's really honorable and admirable. The fact that you have that dual citizenship, you could very easily say, you know what? Things are not going great. I mean, all the way around, the economy, the division, all of it is heavy for all of us. So the fact that you're leaning into the fight, and honoring your your origin story and your grandparents in that way is um, unique. I think that's the first candidate we've talked to that has that story, and just yeah, really admirable.
Thank you. I don't see it that way. I think it's the right thing to do. And
Hmm.
I do think ultimately it's what my grandparents would tell me to do. I don't think they fled because they didn't want to stay and fight. I think they fled because that was their option.
Yeah.
And so I think they would be really proud to see their grandson staying here and deciding that, their home that I'm in is worth staying and fighting for. My family,
Mhm.
my community, the American dream, all of that is worth staying and all of us being involved in fighting for, whether you are, doing postcarding or, you're in your local indivisible group, or if you're running for office, there is no part of this that is not important.
I agree.
Greg, I got to ask you because I mean, living in Massachusetts, it cannot be easy to get along in this day and age. Affordability being such a big deal, but Massachusetts, in particular, is one of the most the highest in terms of cost of living. Real estate is pretty highly priced up there. As affordability is part of your platform, you talk about incrementalism and how it's kind of left the working class behind. I want you to kind of explain that a little bit to our viewers because incrementalism in itself is a good system, but it's left the working man behind because inflation is out the wazoo, real estate rental stuff is crazy. And so, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I think about incrementalism, it's this idea that, politicians have been running on, let's just think of something like healthcare, especially when we're talking about affordability here a little bit.
Mhm.
Politicians, even the person, the incumbent I am challenging right now, have been running on the same issues for over 20 years. We're going to deliver healthcare for the American people that is affordable and accessible, and yet here we are in 2026, and we still do not have it. And so incrementalism to me a little bit is even the Affordable Care Act. Like, did it get people on health insurance? Did it take care of some of those issues? Yes. But we are still back in that same issue, fighting over healthcare and saying that we can't afford it or it's just not going to work or that other countries can't do it. And we can. We have the money. If we can spend $1 billion a day in a war in Iran that nobody here wants, there's no end to it. There is no way that we come out of this on the winning side. And I just believe that Republicans and Democrats have used this. If we just give an inch, you know what I mean? They won't request the mile. And so I'm here to request the mile. We're not going to just bring back the Affordable Care Act. We're going to bring a single payer healthcare system. We're going to do Medicare for all. We are going to make sure that 50% of this country doesn't fall into bankruptcy because of a medical emergency, which is the truth right now. And so for me, incrementalism is not, being on the campaign trail and asked a lot, what's the one thing you're going to focus on? And I think that's part of the issue that we've seen with Democrats is that we can do this one thing, but we can't do all these other things that make a life affordable in the United States, especially here in Massachusetts. And so for me, it's going in there and being like, we're not only are we going to pass Medicare for all and make sure that Americans have an affordable and accessible health care, we're going to change infrastructure. We're going to revamp education systems so the education system actually provides youth with a future that is not them just going into debt by going into college.
Mhm.
There are other options for them, whether it be a trade or knowing how to open up their own business. I just think there are a multitude of paths that someone who's a former educator that we could be providing for students that isn't just pigeonholing them into one option. and not providing them with a modern future because the education system is very much modeled on the same thing I had growing up.
Yeah. Yep. So you've worked all of your jobs, as far as I can tell, have really been service based. And I include education in that, right? That is a service based job in my estimation. So how has your career, how have those jobs sort of given you a unique perspective as someone that would potentially be you know, fulfilling a government role? Because a lot of the people that we see coming into our government, they get classified as elites. These are people that come from Ivy League schools, and they're sort of groomed and conditioned to get into politics. And as far as I'm concerned, it's mostly just to shape policy for the people in their orbit and to financially enrich themselves. So as someone who's really worked a lot in the service industry, what kind of perspective does that give you running for Congress or potentially being in Congress?
Allison, I love everything you just said. If you want to come work on the campaign, let me know. But
Happy to do anything to help you,
I,
of course.
I agree. There is a certain pedigree of people who are, they're from the Ivy League background, lawyers, whatever, that they're the ones who are meant to be in these roles. That is, it is far too complex of a role for someone like me, who is a former high school history teacher or general manager of a restaurant, to ever be involved in to write legislation that actually impacts working Americans. But in both of my roles, I have seen what the current system has, which I agree with you. I think that people that pursue these roles are often looking to accept packed money, trade in stock, and then regulate the same industry that they're trading, they're making deals with, backdoor deals with. They're accepting these packed dollars, they're trading stock, their portfolios go up every time that they write new legislation. And so that is not the type of person I want to be. I think of, being an early educator. I was a substitute teacher for a long time. Then I went to my student teaching and started teaching, and seeing students who, just didn't want to pay attention or kept sleeping every day, and more experienced teachers would kind of turn me into or tune me onto that. There's, think of the environment or the community that you're in, and
Right.
some of these kids are working after school to help their parents. Some of them are watching their siblings. Some of them are doing a multitude of things. They're not eating unless they're here at school. And then that's similar to me being a restaurant manager. I worked for small businesses, not big, huge corporation, like, not like massive hotel chains. I worked for small businesses. So typically they're not able to provide health insurance for their staff. So I'm, managing staff who, if they take a day off, not only are they typically not being paid, they don't have health insurance. They don't have that safety net. And I think when I see a lot of what's going on in the country right now, I recognize that, when people are like, why isn't everyone out protesting? Why isn't everyone out furious about that? And I'm like, they just don't have those safety nets that, some of the European countries do, where they can literally shut down an entire day's worth of their economy because they have those
Mhm.
safety nets. And so that those are the things that I want for the American people, whether they agree with me or not, whether they're on the same side of the aisle, whoever I represent. I want them to know that their tax dollars should go to things that support them, make their lives better, and make sure that they're secure. Because as far as I'm concerned, national security includes the health and well-being of our population. And right now, I do not think we have that.
I love that. I love that. And I love the point that you made, Craig, about, you know, it is a privilege in America to participate in protests and general strike days. And a lot of people are like, well, we stopped using Amazon. Well, some people can't afford not to stop using Amazon. Some people can't afford not to shop at Walmart when there's a massive protest against those larger corporations. They're designed to you know to prey on people that depend on those services and monopolize in that way. So I think that's a great lens to look through when we talk about why isn't everybody out there doing everything they can. Um, there's some privilege in that statement. Not everyone can do that.
For
So
sure. And we know Walmart and Target and corporations like that come in and drive out those small businesses. So
yeah.
there is no other option for these people but to shop at some of these places, especially if they're,
Hmm.
in very rural areas. If the only place you can get some items is from Amazon delivery, then of course you're not going to be able to boycott that. And,
Yeah, of
we
course.
totally understanding of that too. In my indivisible group, that was what we focused on as well. But like don't you can do something. Don't make it you have to do it all. We can't do
Hmm.
it all. We all have our lane. We all have our role. We're all in our boat trying to move progress forward. As long as we're cheering each other on and making sure we're all moving that forward, it's the best that we can do.
Yeah, love that.
So, Craig, an idea I really liked on your website was term limits for Supreme Court justices, and you had broader things on there like potentially, getting people off the Supreme Court through the Ethics in Government Act. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that because I don't know as much about the Ethics in Government Act, and I think that's something that our audience would really enjoy. Just talk a little bit about this Supreme Court. I mean, we just saw the hypocrisy of them not allowing Virginia to redistrict while they are literally letting the entire South redistrict almost willy-nilly. And this is not something that we can continue to deal with. So talk a little bit about how you would reform the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think most people I would hope would be extremely surprised if the Supreme Court accepts gifts and, monetary donations of other value, whether it be vacations, houses, cars, et cetera, from very wealthy people. And the idea that they are not influenced by those types of things, I think, is just crazy. It goes back to members of Congress trading stock and accepting PAC dollars from the same industries they regulate. There's just no real disclosure here. There's no forcing of their hand here to one disclose that to Congress. And two, if they do, there is no real mechanisms in place right now to really hold them accountable other than pursuing impeachment. So my idea and the idea behind the ethics and government reform is that on a yearly basis, bi-yearly basis, whatever it decides, is that they have to do financial disclosures, show where money is coming from, and if there are any nefarious sort of connections like that, we need to start holding them accountable. I think our Constitution, as it stands right now, our founding fathers, I don't think ever foresaw the influence that oligarchs would possibly have in the United States. And definitely not in terms of when you think of the level that AI has now, those types of CEOs, Larry Ellison controlling our media. So those types of acts, and I think it should go for Congress as well. You know what I mean? They have to disclose their stock trades, but if they don't disclose them in time, it's a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
My own congressman didn't disclose a stock trade until 45 days later. And to me, that is, and to still have your position without any sort of repercussions other than, well, don't do that again, or here's a minimal fine. God knows how much you made on the stock trade itself.
Mhm.
And so, again, I think there's just objectively, if you were talking about another system or a business that you were creating and you had these sort of loopholes, most people would say we should try and make sure that that can't happen, that people can't take advantage of the system in that way. Because when you hear about fraud and theft, those are the types of things that I think of. That's fraud. That is frauding the American people. That is manipulating policy through financial means. Like, sure, you can't donate so much through a PAC, but you know what I mean? There's all those other ways that they're doing it. And so for
Yeah.
me, there's it goes tax code too. There's so many loopholes here that allow these corporations to not pay federal income tax. Even
Hmm.
someone like Elon Musk, when he bought Twitter, he bought that by putting up his shares from Tesla.
Yeah.
So it's like who's really paying for this? How wealthy is this man? Why are we letting this system continue to flourish? Because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't take care of the American people. We continue to take our tax dollars to give it to someone like Elon Musk, who can then control industries like EVs, satellites, media, social media, and then we have the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
So I think there are so many easy ways of just enforcing some basic ethic and financial disclosures of where's your money coming from? What are you doing with it? And if it's coming from people that you should not be accepting money from, then we have to hold you accountable.
Hmm. Yeah, love that. And I think, I mean, gosh, I just heard that Trump released his stock investment disclosure over the first quarter of this year, and really shameless. Over 3,000 stock trades, most of them tied directly to policies that he's greenlighting. And we just have to stop. We
There's the
just really
predict
have to stop.
For sure. And then there's the prediction markets as well that are
Yes.
almost completely unregulated. We're
Hmm.
seeing there was one person I think held accountable for a stock trade right before, whether it was Iran or another military decision. But people are using the government to enrich themselves in a
Totally.
way that is comparable to the Gilded Age, if not pre like French Revolution. We are just seeing this massive wealth disparity.
Yep.
And
It's
I
just
agree.
gross.
It is gross, and it's again, it's a reminder that there is no taxation without representation. Like we are not
Yes.
represented in the way that we should be, and so therefore, I'm very happy to be a progressive candidate because I see the other people that I am running with, my contemporaries, whether it's in Massachusetts or across the country, and I'll focus on really making sure that working and middle class people are the focus and not in this arbitrary way of
Hmm.
you hear these politicians get up there and be like, he's taking away our health care. And I'm like, you're not part of this.
Yeah.
You're not the one losing health care because not only are you paid $175,000 a year, you have socialized medicine, you are you're given, stipends for housing, for food. You're taken care of. You're not in this with us. And
Hmm.
it's it's very obvious that they don't understand what we're going through. And they're taking away our health care. I'm like, no, you don't understand. They could basically take away our health care because we're paying $500 a month, thousands of dollars of premiums. It doesn't matter. It's not affordable. It's not accessible. It doesn't work for us anyway. None of this
Yeah.
is working for us.
Yep. Agreed. Again, agreed. So let's talk about that incumbent. Your incumbent has been in office for, is it over 20 years?
It depends. He has been in some sort of public office since
Okay.
I was born. Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And so
listen, you look very young, Craig, but it sounds
I
like a
am
long
40.
time.
I am 40. He has been
Okay.
in his current role finishing out eighth term. And
Ugh.
I will say, so, I'm 40 years old. I moved out of Massachusetts in my later 20s, went up to Boston, moved down to New York City. I met my husband. We adopted our dog, moved to Texas for a couple of years. It was too hot. We came
Yeah,
back to
I
Massachusetts.
get that. As a
We came
Northeasterner, I get that, Craig.
100%. I was so thankful to cast a vote against Ted Cruz, and I'll always be like,
Hmm.
I'm happy I was part of that. But yeah, we were like, this isn't the place for us. We are both New England guys
Yeah.
at heart. So we came back here. And so, I started, like most people, being an informed voter is very important to me, understanding the issues, being able to talk to the issues to people in my community, people that I come across, people that don't agree with me, so that
Hmm.
I can advocate for change that will hopefully influence them, working as a poll worker. And those were the types of things that I thought were important, getting involved in Indivisible. And then after the election, I was like, I am never going to vote blue no matter who, again, because that does not represent the working and middle class. And so I
Yeah.
started looking at the people who I voted for, who I did not know. And Bill Keating was one of them. And so I looked into more about that and I saw that he hadn't had a town hall in 6 years. And so
The
thankfully,
audacity, Craig.
the audacity, because in my most recent role, wasn't in restaurant, it was more for a software company, but had a meeting with my boss weekly,
Yep.
monthly, and quarterly. And
Most
every one of
people in
those
corporate America, that's the bare minimum.
And all of those meetings are about critiquing your performance so that you
Hmm.
are better. And so this isn't like a situation where a town hall is just people yelling at you, although after not having one for 6 years, I can imagine people might be upset.
Yeah.
And that was around the time all these town halls were happening. People were just angry, and as they should.
Hmm.
But he decided to have a town hall. I was the first one there. I was the first question because I want my representation to understand not only what we're going through, but what our thoughts are and how that they can be better. I had sent a letter to his office saying Bill Keating should go to all these parts of the district because
Mhm.
they're considered a little red or purple. They don't agree with him. And at some point, this administration's policies are going to hit those people hard. And they'll remember the Democratic congressman who showed up despite that town going 90% for Trump and
Right.
saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen to you. And so I went to that town hall. That was 60 days into the administration. He had already accepted PAC dollars from Lockheed Martin for a term that he hadn't even announced for yet. And one of the first things he said on stage was, don't ask us to do what we can't. We're the minority party. We can't do anything. And the Republicans have never accepted that. And
Never.
and you see it with these votes. It's
Mhm.
sometimes it's one Democrat who makes sure the war powers resolution doesn't pass, or it's 40 of them who, vote to decide that that Corsa Act goes through, and we can pretend that retail theft is a massive issue, and now allowing DHS and ICE to surveil us even more than they were before.
Yeah.
It is just this disconnect again. You know what I mean? You're not the minority party, which means you are the opposition. You are in charge of making sure that this stuff doesn't pass. And you're also in charge, when you're a representative, of making sure that your constituents are informed. And so if I had a congressional office, I wouldn't have a town hall every 6 years. I'd have one once a quarter. I'd have one as often as I possibly could. And I would be using my social media to make sure that my constituents knew what I was doing if I
Mhm.
was. Since then, he hasn't had another one. He had one on Zoom for indivisible group leaders only, so it's sort of privatized. Hasn't had another one. I know through my activism work that he had a petition dropped off to his offices in January and February and March asking for quarterly town halls, and there still hasn't been one. And
Shameful.
it,
Shameful.
and it's
And
the same.
listen, even if
Sorry.
you do believe, even if you truly believe that, the machinery in DC does not allow you to be really effective in this environment, the least you can do is sit down with your constituents and hold community, hold space for how everyone is feeling and what they're experiencing, and what can we do on a local level to ease some of that burden while we figure things out at the federal level. It's just shameful that any Democrat would ignore their constituents for basically 6 years.
Yeah, how do we raise each other up? And then on top of that, his pattern is similar to others in the sense that if they can just ride it out, they can get one more term in.
Mhm.
He's 72. He's had 40 years or longer of a career in public office. $2 million in stock trades. What is the purpose here? What is the end goal? You know what I mean? Is it to protect your legacy? If you haven't done that yet, one more term isn't going to do that. We
Right.
need real working class representation in office that isn't going to say, yeah, we can do healthcare maybe, or we can't invest in that right now because we have to fix the Middle East. And obviously our country is a mess. We got to figure this out.
Mhm.
Wait one more term. We're not waiting one more term.
Yeah.
I think that is very clear, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. You're not waiting anymore. You want to be part of the change. You want to see the people that reflect your values in office. And so,
And that's what people are looking for, honestly.
For sure. And another thing they're looking for is to get dark money out of our politics, right? And this is something that you've talked about on the campaign trail, getting people to disclose the dark money through the Disclose Act. Overturning Citizens United is something that is, a major priority for progressives like us. But some big news that just happened a few days ago, Hawaii decided to basically end Citizens United in their own state.
yep,
And it's something that where it's just like, God, I wish that we thought about that 10 years ago,
Like,
right?
duh,
but
right?
but
Yeah.
they got it started. So is that something that you're maybe looking into for Massachusetts as a state that is very blue, and I think would be very amenable to doing something like passing a Massachusetts only ban of Citizens United?
as the birthplace of the revolution for this country, I can't imagine a state that would be better off taking that on, to be
Yeah.
honest. I
Yeah.
do think that there are a lot of people who benefit from PAC dollars in this state, and my representative is one of them. A lot of the representatives in the state do. So I agree. I think state, local level, they also need to be pursuing that to make sure Massachusetts has its own act. If it needs to be a patchwork state at first to make sure that different states are stopping Citizens United, I support that. But I will also recognize that federally we cannot give that up. We need to make sure that
Yeah.
this is something that is federally banned as well. Whether it's we mirror Hawaii's or Montana, because I think Montana is pursuing the same
Yep.
type of legislation. Um, I do believe that there's even some legislation in Massachusetts that's it's been put forth. I don't know how much traction it's gained yet, but I think we're again, you're seeing it sort of catch on. People are
Mhm.
getting it, and that this system has not worked. And I do pull it back to 2001, in which we've just started heavily investing all of our money into the military and starting to just not be the problem solvers that this country has always been. You know, we looked at the moon and we were like, how do we get up there? And we started saying things like, we can't afford it, or we can't do that for the American people, or that's not realistic, when all of our contemporaries in terms of the Western democracies are doing it.
Yeah.
And so I am ready to whether it be, fight for Massachusetts to pass that on its own, or in my role as a congressman to fight for it as a national ban, but Citizens United and getting dark money out of it. And I've made a video about this. This is why I think overturning stock trading, banning stock trading by members of Congress has to be part of it as well,
Mhm.
because they'll still manipulate the system to make sure that the corporations that they're invested in benefit from their legislation, and that closed loop needs to be broken. And overturning Citizens United is just one piece.
Yeah. And I think I heard a while back, Scott Galloway, who I'm not a huge fan of, most women are not, was talking about, raising the salaries of Congress people. And I'm not opposed to that because if you're living in Massachusetts and you're having to travel back and forth to Washington, D.C. on a regular basis, most likely you're going to have to invest in a second residence or long term Airbnbs. And, the reality is, while they get paid very well, they have this unique sort of double life that they have to live and fund. And that that is ripe for corruption.
Mm.
That is ripe for trying to earn money outside of your salary to not only, fund the lifestyle that you desire, but fund the lifestyle that is necessary to serve in that role. So I'm not completely opposed to raising the salary to sort of counteract those challenges. Um, but the insider trading and the pack money, it's just got to go. And we have to make sure that we are decentivizing politicians to pursue that avenue, you
Yeah,
know?
I think, again, part of that is minimizing when they can be fundraising and campaigning.
Mm-hmm.
Time off from DC is not time to be in rooms with special interests and lobbyists and large donors. It's time to be in your district. It's time to
Yeah.
be having town halls, office hours, be meeting with businesses or people who are being impacted by whatever is currently happening in society. Just because it's a Democrat, Republican in office, we know that doesn't mean everything is great for everyone. There's always work to be done. And
Yep.
so I personally think the salary is sufficient. I don't think I would be able to vote for more, especially because the more I look into it, the more I hear of they get stipends for food and housing and that.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's
So if
true.
they're getting that, then
Yeah,
you're fine.
you're
You don't
fine.
need to, even me thinking about the potential of becoming a congressman.
Hmm.
I have considered that exact scenario. And
Yeah,
I'm like, well, I guess I would take the Amtrak from Providence to DC rather
right.
than flying unless there was an emergency. I
Yep.
guess I would try and find a roommate, in
Yeah, yeah,
DC.
yeah.
Find another up and coming progressive who's joining in the
Yep.
same time as me, who understands what I'm going through, that type of
Hmm.
thing, because this is the life that I have lived.
Yeah.
These are the decisions that I have made. And I know that everyone watching this in the last year has had to make a decision of what they're cutting back on,
Right.
whether it be something
Absolutely.
more, enjoyable, whether it's something like a hobby or a passion project, or, it's because you're not wealthy and you're already cutting back on food and other things that
Hmm.
you need. I know everyone listening is making those decisions. And so I would not be able to, in good conscience, raise my salary with that going on.
Makes
Um,
sense.
but I appreciate that, like you said, like that. It's supposed to be hard work. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be a personal dedication. It's supposed to be public service. It's not supposed to
Correct.
be personal enrichment. It's not supposed to be a career, which
Yep.
is why on top
Term
of banning
limits.
term limits and on top of banning when they can campaign finance, it's
Yeah.
banning
And
them
there's
from
and
lobbying
there's
for
plenty
10
of
years.
opportunity to earn money in the private sector after you're done with your however many terms we're going to cap it to in the Senate and in the House, right? Personally, I'd love to see like 12 years. Two Senate terms is the max, six House terms is the max. It is incentivizing to get in there and get as much done as possible because you know your time is finite. Um, and it's also, you're going to be serving under at least two different presidential administrations. So to me, I feel like that's good enough. Let's, no, God, no. Oh my God.
Embarrassing,
It
America.
really
We cannot
is.
continue to have stuff like this happen.
It's insane.
Dianne Feinstein too. I mean, we
Oh,
remember her being told how to vote on the floor, and it was just like, how
yes.
is this happening? Just vote yes, Senator. It's no. That is just, and I'm so happy we're having this conversation about term limits because there's a lot of people who not holding public office voters who will say, well, I don't really believe in that. I think elections are term limits, or, I think that we need that institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
And elections aren't term limits. Obviously,
Mm-mm.
we know that. That's why we have term limits. But I also think institutional knowledge has demonstrated that in the last 20 years, it has done more damage than good. That this
Exactly.
institutional knowledge has created this idea of, like I hinted at earlier, of this complexity of being in Congress, and only
You
people
wouldn't
from
understand.
you couldn't possibly make
No.
legislation. You couldn't
Yeah.
possibly dish out this 500-page bill that nobody can read in time before they sign and pass it.
Meanwhile, they have
And
handfuls of assistants doing all of that work for them, know that, right? These bills that they have to read, sure, they're looking at it, but they've got aides all over the place that are parsing through all of that language, giving them the cliff notes. They're up to speed by the time they walk in to make the vote. It's not that hard, y'all. Don't let them tell you, that you just wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand if not for the people around them that make their job easier.
they don't understand because they're not the ones that have made the sacrifices that we have had to make last year. They're not the ones that are looking around and going, what do I have to cut back on right now because things are so unaffordable and this is unsustainable for me.
Yep. Yep. So before we wrap things up, and Seth, I'll give you the final question we ask all of our guests. When is your primary, Craig?
My primary is September 1st.
Okay, you've got a
So
while.
I've got some good time for sure.
And then you've only got that short time to, before the actual election, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and the MAGA candidate, I mean, come on,
Yeah,
no one
forget
in
it.
Massachusetts is buying that grift anymore. You
And
know what
so
I
how
mean?
many people are running on the Democrat side? Are you running Democrat? You're running Democrat.
Yep.
Sometimes we have independent candidates too, so I
Yeah,
just want to make sure. Um, so you have your incumbent, you have you, and then how many others?
that's just me and him.
Wow, really?
Right. Yeah. So
That's exciting.
it is exciting. It's interesting, being in this district, moving back, you forget how small town, a big district can even
Hmm.
feel. The Attorney General of Massachusetts moved into the district, so there was a lot of rumors that she was going to run for the seat. There are rumors of other people running. It's part of the reason why I ran. Not only do I think we need working class representation in Congress, it didn't
Hmm.
seem like anyone of the establishment was willing to challenge someone who has been largely unproductive. And that's what drives me crazy about it too. So not only am I trying to flip the seat, we're trying to change the system a little bit here too, because we can't as a party, Democrats, you know what I mean? I don't really know if I identify as a Democrat like that. For me, I am
More of
pursuing
a
the seat.
progressive,
We're
democratic
progressive, right?
socialist leaning.
Right,
Yeah.
we caucus with them, but
Hmm.
we're never going to change if we continue to just support the system as it is. We
Yeah.
can't be the other option if we're just basically MAGA light. If we're
Yep.
just like, yeah, the system's fine as is. I just want to go back to the day before Trump was elected in 2024 or 2016. If we can go to the day before that, everything's fine. Everything was great for everyone.
I
And
know.
we all know that it wasn't. And so let's bring forth some real change. And whether it's me or another progressive candidate, I'm so excited about the influx of people who are not of that pedigree deciding that, you know what, I'm I'm deserving of that.
Yeah.
I deserve a seat at the table. We all deserve a seat at the table. So
Damn
Yeah,
right.
and we're excited that people like you are getting a chance to finally make some noise in a place like Massachusetts. So Craig Swallow, we want obviously we asked this question to all of our interviewees, and we want to ask it to you. Do you take any dark money, any PAC money, any foreign interest money for your campaign, and do you commit to progressive values?
I commit to progressive values, no PAC dollars, no APAC dollars, no PAC dollars that are associated with any foreign governments. We are here again. We're going to change the system. We're going to overturn Citizens United. We're getting this dark money out of politics.
Cool.
Love it.
So we take Craig, we place him on the scale, and we slide him over to
To
Bernie
the Bernie
Sanders,
side.
as
Yeah.
opposed to a Chuck Schumer crying Chuck Schumer. Uh, and
I
so
appreciate being in
once
that
again,
group.
man,
Hmm.
great to talk with you, and thank you so much for the time. And
Yeah.
like I said, very excited that a guy like you is getting to a Massachusetts guy, through and through, been there your whole life. You know the inner workings of this state better than a lot of people. And somebody like you, it's high time that you guys get in Congress.
I really appreciate the support. You guys, what you two are doing here, getting someone like me just a little platform, a little way of getting myself out there, having people hear my vision for what can be different is so important. So thank you guys, and we're all doing our part in this fight.
Yeah.
So we all need to keep
Absolutely.
going.
I mean, this has been a real pleasure. I could talk to you forever. I hope to talk to you more. Really rooting for you. And you're a friend of the show now. Anything you need, Craig, between now and your primary and beyond, please let us know. We'd love to have you back.
Hey,
And we're
anytime you
gonna
want.
maybe swap houses because I wanna see some more of Massachusetts. And we've got some stuff in my way that I think you would love since you haven't visited some
Yeah,
of the beaches
absolutely.
and the coastline here.
For sure. A holiday swap, but if not, we'll do another podcast together.
Perfect. Love that.
Yeah.
Right.
All
Y'all have
right.
a
Thanks,
wonderful night.
Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Seth, Craig Swallow, what a guy. I really enjoyed that conversation. Um, I have not been to Massachusetts and now I have to go
Yeah,
because it's just, the way he described, not only during the interview, but before we started recording, he just has such a deep love for that place. He has such a deep rooted history with that community. And I think he's capable of really big things.
absolutely. I mean, Craig is a guy who's been in Massachusetts his whole life. He
Mhm.
understands the struggles of everybody that lives around him. And it's high time once again that people like that get in Congress.
Yeah.
We want people who are qualified, sure, but we want people who are still in tune with the neighborhoods.
Mhm.
People who are not jaded by years and years of Congress, where
Right.
you know people look at Congress like a stepping stone to being a senator, and a senator to the VP, and so on and so forth. We need people like Craig who are willing to go in, vote for term limits for himself,
Yes.
and put the pressure on himself to get in there and get the work done for the people of Massachusetts.
And, he talked about his incumbent who has held one town hall in 6 years, in the last 6 years.
Mm-mm.
The people of his district have petitioned him, asking him to do more frequent town halls quarterly, maybe 2 a year. And nope, won't do it. So, Craig has also made the promise of doing quarterly town halls or as many as the people need. And this is the type of representation I think that people are so hungry for. And it's missing and so needed all across the country.
Yeah, people like the incumbent there in Craig's district. I mean, that is so representative of the
So
old guard of the
typical.
Democrats. And this
Yeah.
is why progressives are having their moment because they are willing to step in and listen and
Hmm.
learn and not act like some celebrity. Like
Right.
you should be out amongst the people. You represent the people. The problem with Trump in China is that he's got 17, 20 billionaires with him. He's not taking our politicians. He's not
Hmm.
taking the people who should be representing us in China. He's
Right.
taking billionaires. And so this is what I'm talking about. And somebody like Craig is badly needed because he's going to fight for Massachusetts. And that's going to be his only motivation.
Yes. And that's what progressive politics is all about,
Yeah.
folks. Get into it. Look into your progressive candidates coast to coast, north and south. And my opinion, Craig Swallow, Ninth District, Massachusetts. Whoo, I don't know what you're doing if you're not voting for that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure y'all visit his website, volunteer if you can, donate if you can. It always helps. And he's got some time, right? He's got the whole summer to continue to campaign. So plenty of time left for you guys to
Get to know him.
help out a guy like Craig Swallow who deserves it.
Absolutely. All right, Seth. Well, another busy week. We've got an interview tomorrow, another one on Tuesday, and then a little bit of break, and then more on the weekend. So it is primary season. It's getting hot in here. We're going to keep going. And I will see you again tomorrow.
Let's go.
Bye, Seth.